Not long ago, I found myself in a leadership slump. Baseball players get in a hitting slump once in a while. Leaders get in slumps once in a while. I don't know if it's ever happened to you. There were a half a dozen challenges around Willow Creek that I could not solve. I held meetings, I had right people around the table to try to solve these problems. They were not getting solved. It's frustrating to me. About that time, my assistant, Jean, walked into my office and she put a half a dozen new leadership books on my desk. Most of them were written by really smart people. Harvard people, Stanford people, people with a lot of initials behind their names. And I looked at that stack of books, I looked at my unsolved leadership challenges, and I started losing a little confidence. I thought, maybe I've come to the end of my run. Maybe I have to be smarter, faster, better, younger, whatever, to address the challenges that I can't resolve. And again, I'm looking at these titles of books by these brilliant people, all the initials behind their name, and I was thinking that there's only 4 initials behind my name, M-A-D-G, middle-aged Dutch guy. Like, oh. Right about then, a friend of mine who is not a part of our church, but a friend wanted me to conduct his wedding. So I don't like doing weddings that much. Sorry, brides. It's just not missional enough, actually. But so I drive over, and I'm having this crisis in leadership, you know, these unsolvable challenges that I can't wrap my brain around. And I think, this might be a little booster for me because I know I can do weddings. I've done hundreds of them. Hard to screw up a wedding, actually. So I get there. I hadn't had time for the rehearsal, so someone just gave me the sheet of how all this was supposed to go. Processional went just as planned. Father gave the bride away. It was cool. I gave a few remarks. Lame, but short. So we get to the vow part. They repeat after me. We get to the covenant part. That's all going good. And we get to a music part, and I turn to the woman sitting at the keyboard, and I announced the song she was going to sing, gave her the nod, and she sang the song. No comment. Anyway, I'm just saying. But now, I only have a little bit longer to go in this wedding, and it's going to be all over. I'm going to escape with my life. It'll be a success experience. Get right to the end, and I realize in my notes it says there's one last song. The woman at the piano who's singing as well is going to sing the Lord's Prayer. So we're right at the end, and I said, before I pronounce this bridegroom and bride to be Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I said, we're going to be treated by a song, and so-and-so is going to sing the Lord's Prayer. And I gave her the nod. And I gave her the nod, and she looked back at me and went, I have never had that happen. Thousands of church services, hundreds of conferences, lots of places. When I give the nod to a vocalist, they always go like this. So I do a double take. I look back at her and she's just going like this. And I'm thinking, not now or not ever. So I look at the bride like, what do you want me to do now? And the bride's just horrified. And I think maybe I wasn't clear. So I look over and give her a real nod like this. And while I'm doing that in my mind, I'm glad people can't see what goes on in our minds, you know. I'm thinking, don't make me come over there. You know? And she's just going like this. I'm like, all right. So I said, well, then. Actually, what we're going to do now is I'm going to recite the Lord's Prayer. So I recited the Lord's Prayer, pronounced the man and wife, got in my car, drove back, and like, I can't even do a wedding right. People don't even follow me at a wedding anymore. So, you know, I'm kind of in a bad mood after that whole thing. And I get up the next morning, and really I was having a little leadership confidence issue. And you think I'm making this up, but I got my journal out. My journal's very important to me. When I talk with God, when I try to chronicle the activity of God in my life, most of the time I do that by just writing about it and processing in my journal. And so I said, God, I'm frustrated. I'm in a slump. I've got problems I can't solve. The church needs these issues solved. I've brought bright people around. I'm not trying to do it all alone, but we're stumped. And actually, I wonder if I know anything anymore, you know? So the Spirit started speaking back to me, and I'm going to talk to you more about that in a minute. It was God planting some thoughts in my mind. He's like, Bill, you know some things. It's not like you know nothing. You've been leading for 3.5 decades. You know some things. And I was like, good, remind me of one. And so this is what came to mind. Kind of a fundamental of leadership. And the idea is, leaders move people from here to there. Oh, was I glad that I knew that. Leaders move people from here to there. I wrote that down just like that in my journal. Now, this much I know about leadership. You must be able, if you're a leader, you must be able to stand in front of a group of 3 or 30 or 300 or 30,000, whatever number of people you lead. But you have to be able to say, gang, we are here, current reality, but someday by God's grace, if we link arms, if we focus and sacrifice, if we work and persevere, we are going to wind up there. This preferred future. And we will all love life when we get there. The world will be a better place. Our organization will be stronger. Our church will be more like Acts chapter 2 churches. But I was writing in my journal that day and I said, this much I know. Leaders move people from here to there. Now, the advanced among us right now are saying, Bill, you're just talking about the vision thing. You're just talking about the need to stand in front of people and paint a picture of the future that produces passion in people. You do that and off you go, right? How tough is that? In recent years, I've learned it's a little tougher than I really thought it was over the years. In fact, I used to think that the very first step in moving people from here to there was simply describing how wonderful life would be if we were all there. I would cast as hot a vision as I could about what being there would look like, taste like, feel like, smell like. I'd walk off this very stage, if it went well, spike my Bible over there. Expect the board and the staff to carry me on their shoulders out in the parking lot. But then, almost every time, within 24 hours of the best vision casting I could do, I would get an alarming number of emails from good people, who would say in so many words, hey, Bill, we like it here. There, schmear. We're not going to budge. It's familiar here. It's safe here. We're used to it here. We're staying here. Now, has that ever happened to anybody other than me? Okay, well, what do you do when people say, I'm staying here? Well, I do what most of us do. I crank up the heat of the vision another 500 degrees. I stand up the following week and say, hey, you know, last week I said that life would be wonderful when we get there. I undersold it. It's going to be fantastic when we get there. Paradise, bliss on a stick when we get there. And then the next day the emails would roll in. Nope, we're staying here. I've learned something in the last 18 to 24 months about moving people from here to there. The first play is not to make their sound wonderful. The first play is to make here sound awful. Now take a deep breath. This is really profound. For you slow learners, the first play is not to describe how wonderful there is. It's to describe how awful it would be to stay here. Now, our church has a rocking food pantry that serves thousands of people every month. We also have a cars ministry that some of you know about, where we challenge our more affluent members of this church to donate their car instead of trading it in, donate it to the church. Our volunteer mechanics fix whatever little thing is wrong, and then we donate those to single moms in our church and in our community. Both the food pantry and the cars ministry are very, very cool ministries. But both of these ministries, for many years now, have been housed in leased facilities off our main campus. One of them's 3 miles away, the other is 30 minutes away. In recent months, God has been speaking to our elders and to our staff and volunteers about relocating both of those ministries back onto this campus for a lot of reasons. So the day came where I had to stand right in this place where I am right now, and I had to cast the vision for this in front of thousands of our participating members. As I was preparing that vision talk, I suddenly realized that the average member of our church, hearing this vision for the first time, they were likely to just cross their arms and ask a legitimate question. Why can't both those ministries just stay where they are? You said they're doing good work. It seems like people are being served. So why mess with this? Translated, we want to stay here. So my first move in the vision talk was to list all of the reasons why staying here, letting those stay in their current locations, was a bad idea, unacceptable, just unthinkable. So I started in, and I said, if we don't move those ministries, they will never be able to expand. Right now, our food pantry, especially in the wintertime, before we open it, has hundreds of people standing in the bitter cold in long lines, almost a block long, waiting to get in our food pantry. That's not serving the poor with dignity. We have to be able to house our food pantry in an environment where people don't have to stay in the cold. And a lot of these people who use the food pantry don't have adequate clothing. They don't have winter coats. And I said, it's unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. The cars ministry is crowded, it can't expand, and we're in an economic recession, and we need to serve more single moms, not less. I went from there, and I said, secondly, these things operate off campus, and when we're sharing groceries and giving away cars, the recipients of that generosity can't make the connection that this good stuff is being brought to them by a church, because is so far removed from our church. What church? What suburb? What are you talking about? What kind of faith? We're certainly meeting their physical needs, but we all know deep down that these folks ultimately need God in their lives, and they need a church home and fellowship that they can be a part of. And if they received help right here on our campus, they would make the association that this love and generosity is coming from a church. And I built the case further than that. And I said, only a limited number of Willow volunteers even know where these wonderful ministries are. They're out of sight, out of mind. Volunteers, will probably never wind up serving there because it's just too far away. And on I went. I was just building the case. We cannot stay here. And then, after I built that case, then I said, but I think if we relocated these, this is what the elders and the senior staff of our church believe. If we relocated these, man, a really cool thing could happen. I said, just imagine if at the end of our weekend services, I could say to people who couldn't put food on their table, who were worried about feeding their family the next week, just think if I or others could stand up and say, hey, before you leave the campus, right over there, right there, walk out those doors, meet with some of our volunteers, and we'll give you groceries for a week. We'll pray with you. It's right there, right near the heart and the heartbeat of our church. Imagine if I could say to single moms who drove to church and heard a bad noise in their car, and they have a couple little kids in the back seat, and they're worried, is this car going to get home? Maybe it's not, and they're out of money, and they're out of hope, and they can't do anything. They don't have connections to anyone who can help them. So just imagine if I could say, hey, before you leave campus, drive your car right over to our carsman. It's right there. If it won't run, we'll help you get it right over there, because it'll be right over there, and our volunteers are standing by right now, and they'll fix it. On and on, I cast that vision, and several times during it, people broke into applause, and they were like, yes, yes, we cannot stay here for the reasons you mentioned. And we can see clearly the day when we could be there. But this is really important, gang. Does this make sense to you? Because this is really important when it comes to vision casting. Now, thank you for that smattering. Long before... It's only the advanced that get this stuff. Yeah. And you fail the humility test. Think about this a little bit historically. Long before Dr. Martin Luther King, the great civil rights leader in the United States, long before he gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, he gave hundreds of other speeches that could have been entitled "We Can't Stay Here" speeches. Hundreds of times he stood in front of groups of people and he said, there's too much injustice for us to stay here. There's too much suffering, too much indignity, too much prejudice. In the letter he wrote from the Birmingham jail, he said, we have been here stuck in racial prejudice. We have been here for 340 years. White people still call us boy or nigger. Our women are disrespected. Our children live in fear. Dr. Martin Luther King was just building the case. We cannot stay here. And then one day he turned the corner and he gave the speech, but I have a dream. And he described where there was, where people are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, and on he went. People were ready for the there speech because they had heard several "we can't stay here" speeches. Remember Bob Pierce, who was the founder of World Vision, and that's an organization, worldwide organization, that feeds starving children in the name of Christ. And Bob Pierce used to take donors, wealthy people from the Western world, and take them over to underdeveloped countries, and he would have them stand in the food lines with all these little kids who were starving to death, and he would, again, just position the people, these donors, right in the food line, and then he would wait, and inevitably the food would run out at a certain point. And then these kids some would faint and fall over, some would go back home crying and all that. And Bob Pierce used to just say to the donors, we can't stay here. This is unconscionable. And then he would say, but with your help, with the activity of God, we can go there where we can feed millions of starving children if we could go there. And remember his famous line. He says, we must let our hearts be broken by what breaks the heart of God. What was he really saying? Staying here breaks the heart of God. Leaders, listen up. Your God-given job is not to merely preside over something. It's not to pontificate to your underlings how smart you are. Your job is to not merely preserve something from its gradual demise. Your job, if you're a leader, is to figure out what God wants to get done in this world, figure out what role you play in that, and then to move something or someone from here to there. Your job is to convince people that we cannot and we will not stay here. It breaks the heart of God for us to stay here. But by God's grace, in His power, for His glory, we are moving there. Leaders, do you get it? Do you agree with this? It's a fundamental of leadership. Okay, let's move on. I was journaling that day, deciding if I knew anything about leadership. God reminded me, I know that much. He also reminded me, I know something else. I know that it takes fantastic people, absolutely fantastic people, if you're going to move something or an organization or a church from here to there. You can't do it alone. Recently, I was somewhere in Asia. I got off a fully loaded 747 aircraft late at night, several hundred other passengers, and we were easily a mile from customs and immigration. Just then, right across from the gate, this sleek, modern train pulled up silently, right by where we offloaded. The doors all opened automatically, and we all filed in. The instructions over the PA system came by a pre-recorded voice. The doors closed, and we were whisked off, and halfway to immigration, I realized this whole thing was automated. This whole thing was run by computer. There's no driver, there's no engineer, no safety attendants. And I thought to myself, I want to buy one of these things. Because every time Willow has to go from here to anywhere, all I got to do is load the creakers up, hit the send button on my laptop, and they wind up there. And there's no staff involved, no elders, no deacons, no leadership team, no payroll, no hirings, no firings. How slick is that? Anyone want one of these things? No, you don't. Not really. I don't either. Because one of the greatest joys of leadership is the assembling and knitting together teams of fantastic people. And these teams become the catalyst for moving an organization from here to there. Take that away from leadership, and I don't want to play. This is one of the great joys of my life. And I've been thinking a lot about fantastic people. I've been probably spending more time on that than almost any other thing in leadership the last 2.5 years since I stepped back into my operational role here at Willow. I've had to put a bunch of new teams together. Now, you all know that in the past, I have referenced the fact that when I'm building teams, I look for the 3 C's: character, competence, chemistry. And I still believe in these. I wrote them in a book called Axiom. And character. Why would you mess with someone? Why would you put someone on your team if there are character issues? Your team is not the place to do character reclamation. You can do that in another environment, but man, your team, they need to be solid character. They need to have a competence as high as you can find. They need to have chemistry with the people they're going to sit around tables with. But in recent months, I've been playing with the idea of adding another C, culture, a culture C. And by that I mean the question, what kind of person flourishes on our unique team? What kind of person feels at home on our team? And what kind of person is never going to catch stride? They'll always feel a little bit like an outsider, even though they have character and competence and they can get along with some of the people on the team. Now, this has been rigorous work. We've had to slow our work down and have a lot of extra meetings and ask, what do we value here on our staff team? How do we work? What's our style? What matters to us and what doesn't in the work environment? And then we've had to put that stuff in writing so that we're clear about our culture. So nowadays, when we're thinking of hiring someone, we ask ourselves, certainly they have to meet the 3C requirement, but then we ask, will they fit in with our unique culture, or might they be better off in another church environment? The Willow culture, if you have been wondering, is high challenge. Surprise, surprise. It's high challenge, it's fast changing, it's results oriented, and it's sacrificial to the core. By that I mean, we don't offer potential staff members a tidy career opportunity. We offer them a mission to lay their lives down for. We offer them a servanthood towel and say, will you bear it as Jesus bore his every day? Would you wash the feet of those people that we're calling you to serve? Sacrifice around Willow, around our staff, is normal. So if you're job hunting and you're looking for a low challenge, status quo, emotionally coddling, rarely sacrificing culture, walk away from Willow. You'll never be happy here. And if you really like it slow and predictable and you're looking for employment, a friend of mine owns a turtle farm and he's hiring. All you got to do is lay on a lawn chair and watch. If that sounds good to you, go there. Don't come here. But the point I'm making is that a fundamental of leadership is to attract and develop and retain fantastic people who will flourish in your unique culture. Now, let me go on a brief detour here. Almost all of you right now are carrying an iPhone or a BlackBerry. Many of you are using them right now. I'm watching you. But if I were listening to this lecture, I would be using one too, so I fully understand. But in the next 2 or 3 minutes, if your iPhone or BlackBerry started buzzing and you got word that a staff member from your team has just resigned, I think you would have one of 3 reactions. The first reaction, some of you would go, phew. And you might poke a colleague and go, whew, look. This is a blessing from heaven. It's the best news I'm going to get at this conference. Not because you don't like the person, but maybe because the person wasn't fitting. Maybe the person never really did become a member of your culture. Maybe they never performed at the level that you hoped they would. Maybe there were all kinds of other issues. But sometimes when you hear that someone is going away, the reaction is, whew, because then you don't have to fire them. Okay, let's say you get an email from someone who said that they've just resigned. A second reaction would probably be, for many of you, ugh, oh, ugh, oh. And you wouldn't even want to show anybody. You go, oh, no. This is really a good person who's doing a good job and they fit well in our culture. Oh, I don't want to lose a person like that. I'm going to have to find a good replacement now, and you know that's work. So that would not be your favorite email to receive. Ugh, you'd go. The third response to receiving an email where someone on your staff resigned would be you would read the email, you would read it again, you'd jump up and you'd crawl over about 10 people, you'd run out into the lobby and vomit. Why? Because you would say, this is a fantastic person who's doing fantastic work with a fantastic attitude and a fantastic fit with our unique culture. And you would realize that you might have lost someone who is, by human means, irreplaceable. And it would ruin your whole experience here. And I know about this kind of thing. I've received those kind of emails. I keep a bucket in the lobby, actually. Now, recently, we spent a full day with the top leaders of our church. And we combed through every single name of every employee of our church. And we asked ourselves the simple question, if this person resigned, would we go, phew, ugh, or would we run out in the hall and vomit? And it took a long time for us to comb through and gain agreement on every single staff member. And eventually we did. And over the next several months, if you can believe this, we sat down with each of those fantastic people who would break our hearts if they left. We actually sat down with them in a face-to-face meeting. We looked them in the eye and said to them very earnestly and sincerely, you made us vomit. A whole team of us, actually. We said, no, you're such a fantastic person. You have great character, wonderful competence, good relationships with the team, and you fit our culture. And we're hoping and praying that you'll never leave. Now, if God calls you elsewhere someday, we'll throw a party. Our hearts won't be in it, but we'll throw a party and we'll cheer you on. But we're hoping that you're going to be a part of the core of what God's going to do around Willow for a long, long time. And we want to make a disproportionate investment in your talents and your abilities. We want to develop you to your fullest potential, and tell us if there is ever anything that frustrates you or demotivates you, because we'd like to fix it. Those were some of the most powerful personnel conversations I've ever had. There was actually a lot of tears. One guy said to me after the meeting, some others who were in the meeting laughed. One guy said to me afterwards, he said, "My parents never told me that I was valued and that I had a future in our family, or that they believed in me." And he said, "I'm never going to forget this conversation. And I'm so glad we had it." Building teams of fantastic people, making sure they fit a culture. This is one of the great joys of leadership. A few months ago, a team of us were struggling with a special weekend service that we had high hopes for, but we couldn't find the mind of God of what the service should look like. And so we had extra meetings and extra prayer times, and it was very frustrating, but the team hung tough. And slowly but surely the fog lifted. We found what we felt God wanted us to do on that weekend, and we did it in the strength of God, I believe. And what happened that weekend took our breath away. It was like Acts 2:43. We're in awe of what God did. When the services were all over, this team assembled backstage in the dark places back there. We stood in a little circle, and no one could even make eye contact because we were just still recuperating from the power of God that happened in this room. So people were choked up, and again, it was hard for anyone to kind of break the ice. Finally, one young guy blurted out, "God rocks. That's what he does. He just rocks. That's what I'm saying." Like that. And it's like, well, how do you really feel? And then one of the young women said, "You know, I live for experiences like this." And then it all started pouring out. People just saying, "I love what I do. I love doing it with you guys." Then, "I love you." "Well, I love you." It got sloppy and emotional. And I was like, "Don't touch the Dutch guy. Just, I can feel your love from here. Just don't express it." Some of you think I need counseling. This is post-counseling, what you're seeing right here. Should have seen me before. But I went to bed that night and I was thinking, one of the unspeakable privileges of leadership is the holy challenge, and that's what I call it. The holy challenge of assembling and developing and inspiring a team of fantastic people without whom none of us could ever get from here to there. So leaders, I'm going to ask you straight up. Do you see this as a leadership fundamental? Do you view the assembling of fantastic people, do you view this as a privilege? Does it positively inspire you? Have you defined your culture? Are there some sensitive conversations that you need to have with some fantastic people? Are there sensitive conversations that you need to have with some few people? And say, you know what? You'd probably be a fantastic person in a different culture. But what we're building here, if we're ever going to get from here to there, we need to have fantastic people who fit our culture, who are fired up to do what God's called us to do. Okay. Let's move on to the third leadership fundamental. And this came right out of my journal when I was saying, do I know anything about leadership? Mile markers and celebrations. Mile markers and celebrations. How do you inspire people to stay on the journey? Look with me here. If you're trying to move people from here to there, where on the journey are people most vulnerable? Now, it's not in the early stages, because once you've made here unthinkable, unconscionable, unacceptable, You can't stay here. You get some positive momentum you've described there. And so out of the box, there's some energy that goes, hey, we're moving this way. That's exciting. And when you're almost there, that's exciting because it's right around the corner. You're going to taste it, feel it, sense it's right there. This is the part of the journey where the whole vision gets imperiled. This is the part of the journey where if you're not careful, you can lose the whole thing. My daughter Shauna is running in the upcoming Chicago Marathon. And just to support her and be of encouragement, I've been doing some of her training runs with her. And we've had a lot of talks on these training runs. And she's received proper coaching that, it's not the first 3 or 4 miles that are going to be the real challenge. And it's not even the last couple because the finish line is in sight. But boy, in that middle third, right here, that's where runners break down. That's where they hit the wall. This is what I find in leadership as well. I mean, people can fire up and then it's there, that it's along the way that it gets really hard. When I stepped back into my role here a couple of years ago, we tried to fire up the vision. We tried to get things clear and try to cheer people on to say, hey, here's where we're going and so. But you know what happens? I mean, life happens. Circumstances happen. And within just a few months of really getting the church hooked into a new vision, we had a major economic downturn, I should say, in our economy here in the U.S. We had to adjust our budgets, reduce and realign our staff. We were dangerously low on cash reserves, so we had to build all that up. And momentum was broken. And you all know what I'm talking about when this happens. The zoning doesn't pass. You announce a new building program, but the zoning doesn't pass. Your largest donor moves away. For you pastors, you take a vacation and the guest preacher starts his message when you're not there and he's casting out demons and snake handling and weird stuff. And you come back to a rip-roaring mess and you're like, I just wanted a vacation. I didn't want a mess. You know what happens? People here forget how bad it was when they were still back here, and they forget how wonderful it's going to be when they get to the destination. So here's my recommendation. If you're partway on this journey and you're watching people lose steam, recommendation number 1, refill their vision bucket. Refill their vision bucket. You all have seen me do this before. This bucket, I draw them better than almost anyone in the world. And the problem with this vision bucket that all of us know about is we leaders think that once we fill people up with vision, it'll last for a year. Every person's vision bucket leaks. Everyone's. It has holes in the bottom of it. And these holes represent like the fact that people have real jobs and people don't think about church 24/7. They actually have kids to raise, cars to wash, lawns to mow, bills to pay, and so. And when they're doing all that stuff, the vision leaks out. And so if you feel things getting a little soft, you got to refill the vision bucket more regularly than you think you do. And secondly, and this is even more important, you have to celebrate every mile marker you possibly can on the way to the destination. You got to put mile markers in, even if you create them arbitrarily. You got to put them in and celebrate each one of them. What keeps people on the journey is some sense of hope that they're going to get there someday. Did you get that? What keeps people on the journey is a sense of hope that they're going to get there someday. So you got to mark these forms of progress, these stages of progress, and gather the troops and thank God and cheer them on and bless them. And so I was talking to a pastor some time ago, and he had been raising money for a new education building that they were building at their church, and he worked tirelessly and had everybody all fired up to give. And then in 2008, in October, the economy fell apart in the U.S., and it severely impacted his campaign, cut it almost in half. And I was worried about the guy, so I called him. And I said, how you doing? What's your plan? He said, next Friday night, we're going to hold a celebration dinner. I said, what are you going to celebrate? You only got halfway to your goal. He said, I'm going to provide dinner for everybody. I'm going to tell them that despite the worst recession in our adult lives, we raised enough money for the entire basement and the first floor of our new education building. And that's worth a party in this economy. He said, we're no longer here. We're like halfway there. So we're going to throw a party and celebrate that we're halfway there. And I thought, I'm impressed with this guy, because he turned a setback into a celebration of a mile marker, a celebration of progress. Very clever leadership. A year ago at Willow's 34th anniversary, we had a donor who knows all about the significance of celebrating progress, any kind of headway in the right direction. And he was proud of the progress that our church had made in its ministries despite a very difficult economy. So we were coming up to our 34th anniversary, and he volunteered to buy Chicago's finest pizza, Lou Malnati's pizza, for over 20,000 Willow Creekers. Now you think of pizza for over 20,000 people. Do the math. Yeah. But we announced that we were going to do that. People went crazy. I mean, they showed up for the anniversary. It lifted everybody's spirits. Now, we knew that we hadn't made it all the way to where God wanted us to go, but we knew we had made progress. And that was really one of the most powerful celebrations we've ever had. People remember the pizza. They have no recollection of what I taught about that weekend. But they're pumped up for the 35th, which is just around the corner. A few years ago, I did a 6-month study on the power of inspiration. Did you know that most experts would say there is a 40% differential between an inspired teammate, church member, office worker, an inspired teammate or church member, and one who's uninspired? 40% differential in their productivity. Jesus, the greatest leader who ever lived, would monitor the inspiration level of his followers all the time. And when he saw that they were getting discouraged, he took swift action. He would take them away for a retreat in the mountains where he would pour himself into them and pray for them. Sometimes he would load them into boats and take them to the other side of the Sea of Galilee to get a breather and to just rest. Sometimes he would remind them that they were going to receive huge rewards in the next life for their heroic efforts in this life. But he knew that inspiration matters. It matters to individuals, it matters to churches, and NGOs, businesses, it even matters in families. So let me ask you, leaders, when is the last time you threw a party to celebrate not just the destination? When is the last time you've set some mile markers and said, when we get there, when we achieve this, we don't have to be all the way here, but when we just show that we can make progress, we're going to celebrate. I'm going to stand in front of my people and bless them and honor them, fire them up. When you do this, gang, it just keeps people on the journey all the way to the destination. All right. Well, I have one more matter that I want to talk to you about. And this is something I know something about by God's grace. And that's whispers from God. Whispers from God. I don't think you ever get from here to there in a straight line. I don't think you ever amass fantastic people. I don't think you make much progress on the journey without hearing from God en route, without hearing from God in the process. Now, some of you are getting nervous right now because you've heard people talk about hearing from God. Axe murderers after they do a terrible thing. The newscaster says, "Why did you do such a terrible thing with the axe?" And the person looks straight into the camera and says, "God told me to." Well, you're like, okay, wow. Jesus said in John 10:27, "My sheep hear my voice, and they heed it." My sheep hear my voice, and they heed it. Not just in ancient times, but still today. The primary way God speaks to us is through the Bible. You all know this. If you want to get to know the mind of God, read His Word. I strongly advise all of you, I don't care where you are on your faith journey, I give a strong recommendation. Every leader ought to be an incurable reader of the Bible. And you read it, and its wisdom soaks into your spirit, and it saturates your mind, and you become a better decision maker. You become more solid in your core. I challenge all of you to be regular, relentless readers of God's Word. But in addition, God speaks to us directly by His Spirit. I've never heard an audible voice from God, but I know He puts thoughts in my mind that are not my thoughts. You've had this, I think. You're doing your normal day, and someone comes to mind just repeatedly throughout the course of your day, and you don't even know why it is, but you think, maybe I should call them, and you call them, and you learn that they have a special need going on. And your call was timely. And you go to bed that night, and you go, why did I think of them? Did God put that person on my mind? And now I'm glad I called them. Or maybe you're with a staff member or an employee, and while you're doing business with them, you feel this little nudge in your spirit. You get just a little indication from God. Find out if everything's okay beneath the veneer. And you're like, I'm not going to ask that question. This is an employment situation. But the prompting just stays in your mind. So at the close of the meeting, you say, hey, Frank, everything okay for real? For real? Everything all right? I have a few moments if you want to talk to me. How many of you have had that? And then the story comes out. A marriage under pressure. A kid out of control. A medical report that didn't go well. And later on, maybe a day or two later, you see that person and they come up to you and they go, it's incredible that you asked me about what was going on under the veneer. What made you ask? What do you say? You go, well, I think maybe God put that idea in my head. I've had this hundreds of times. Do you get these promptings? Do you pay attention to them? Do you believe that God still speaks today? Well, I'm one of those guys that really believes this. To the core of my being, I believe this. Most of you know my life story. I was born into a home with Christian parents. My father was a cosmopolitan, world-traveling business guy. The whole script for my life was to walk in his shoes, take over part of his business, and I never thought of doing otherwise. And when I was sitting in a college classroom with an economics major and a business administration minor, I hear a guy talk about the power and the beauty and the potential of the local church. And he said, in a local church, lost people can get found, and found people can be grown up, and lonely people can be enfolded, and the poor can be served, and bored people find a purpose. And he would say the local church is the hope of the world. And if you're giving your life to something other than that, think about it. Think about it. I used to walk out of those college classrooms, my heart beating out of my chest, just going, maybe I haven't really asked God. Maybe I've never really did the full surrender thing. Maybe I'm just following some script that someone else had for me. And not long thereafter, I got this 2-word whisper from God relating to a church. 2 words. Start one. I was like, oh, no. I didn't like the church of my youth. I like all of what comes along with a family-owned business. I really think there's more action in the marketplace than there would ever be in a local church, and I'm an action guy. We're having our 35th anniversary coming up, as I mentioned a little while ago. And I look back and I think all of what I would have missed if I'd have just lived out a script that someone else had for my life. And I don't think I could have, in my human strength, veered from that path. The path was too clearly laid out. But God's whisper was enough. 15 years into the development of our church, I got another whisper. Serve pastors. I was like, you must be kidding. I don't even feel like a pastor. What do you mean? I'm supposed to serve pastors. And over time, it became clear that maybe I was supposed to put a serving towel over my arm and just help or serve in any small way I could, so that maybe not just Willow would get stronger, but maybe if we gathered together and helped each other, the whole church could get stronger worldwide. You're actually here, or wherever you are around the United States or gathered in an international site, you're here because of a 2-word whisper that came into my life a long time ago. Serve pastors. And when I got up this morning, was driving over to the campus in anticipation of what God was going to do in this summit, I thought I could have missed all of this if I blew off that whisper. Do you think God still speaks? I do. I think He tries to speak to you every single day. I was running yesterday and I saw a pickup truck, and it had an antenna on top of it that looked like the old-fashioned television antenna with like 7 or 8 sticks hanging out of it and all these weird things. Remember that in the 50s and the 60s? You saw them on the roofs of homes? There's a pickup truck with this weird antenna. And I thought, there's probably a reason why he has that kind of antenna. There's probably a particular radio frequency or beam of some sort that he needs to receive. And that's the best antenna to receive that. Now, I want to ask you this question. If you felt God was transmitting to you on a regular basis, like even throughout the course of your day, how concerned would you be about the quality of your antenna? I mean, would you like, hey, I don't want to miss anything. I think God speaks, and because we don't clean our antennas, we don't expect Him to speak, we don't listen, we don't lower the ambient voice and noise in our life, these things just fly around and they don't take root in our lives. And I'm not just saying that you have to have life-altering whispers. A few weeks ago, I was reading my Bible, and I came into a section that talked about the presence of God, how you can feel the friendship and the accompanying presence of God throughout your day. And I pondered it for a little while. I wrote out some prayers to God, and then it was time for me to go on my run. So I'm out running, and I'm running down a country road. I only get a little ways, and I see a little kid in a stroller. Mom's pushing this tiny little kid, and the thought occurs to me, it's like the Spirit whispered, Bill, I've loved you since you were that size. I've loved you since the day you were born. I've had a heart to want to do your life with you since you were a toddler. So then I'm running, and I got a little bit interrupted. Someone riding a bike came alongside of me and said courteously, on your left, so that I wouldn't, freak out. And so they passed me, and that little phrase, on your left, I thought, God has been on my left, on my right, in front of me and behind me my whole life. He's been an ever-present friend to me. And when I was just completing the run, I see this old man. He has a cane. He's just shuffling along. Spirit said, that's what you look like. And so but really, the Spirit said to me, I'm going to be with you all the way to the end. You're never going to have to do this alone, Bill. Never. And it was powerful to me. But my question to you, once again, is, do you think God speaks? And will you do everything in your power to hear His voice and heed it? Now, I waited 35 years to write about this, because I know if misunderstood, people go crazy with this stuff. and they do more harm than good. Which is why I took 2 years to write my thoughts and feelings in a book about this. You can hear more about that. But I really feel that if leaders worldwide were gaining the additional wisdom, gaining the additional support, the additional direction that a whisper could give them, we would see incredible changes in leadership all over the world. The smartest moves I've ever made as a leader didn't come from my human wisdom. It came from promptings, a wisdom beyond my own. The times when I wanted to quit, and there have been embarrassingly quite a few times when I was done at Willow. Just like, who needs this? One time in particular, just utter frustration and feeling misunderstood and all. And God whispered to me, "You're a treasured child of the Most High God. Don't you quit." That whisper saved my ministry. Some of you came here with a resignation letter all printed out. And maybe as I just said those words, you are a treasured child of the Most High God. Don't quit. I'm with you. I'm going on your left. I'm going on your right. I'm going in front of you. I'm coming behind you. I'll be with you till your final day. If you hear whispers like that and heed them, no telling what God might do. So here's how I want to close the session. I have found out that many of the whispers that come my way are quite short. Like the beginning of this church, just a 2-word whisper. Start one. Serving pastors, just serve pastors. Sometimes these whispers are stand firm. Or I had a 3-word whisper recently. Admit your mistake. I had a whole truckload of pride all loaded up, gaining momentum in a certain situation. The Spirit just kept whispering, admit your mistake, Bill, come on. And a lot of my whispers are quite short. So what I'd like you to do is look up on the screens, as many of you are already doing, and I want you to see some whispers. And these are the kinds of whispers that God does a lot. And if you have something to write with, I'm going to scroll through quite a few of these as we close. And if one of them kind of grabs you, if you go, hey, that might have been from God. That one right there might be exactly what God was asking or whispering to me. So you ready? Let's just start going through some of these. Don't quit. Here's the next one. Step up. It's time for some of you. You know that God's asked you to take a next step. You just lack the courage to step up. Take the risk. You've been too safe. There's a risk God wants you to take. Today He's speaking to you. Take the risk. Apologize now. There's a conscience issue. There's a broken team. Maybe you've come with them. And before we go to the next session, some of you will hear God whisper, just apologize. Just grab the person at the break and go, I'm sorry. Can we deal with this right now? Make the tough decision. Many of you know exactly what God's been asking you to do. Just one tough decision away from getting it done. Today's the day for some of you. Get help. Might mean Christian counseling, as I've benefited from, or some other thing that you know about. How about this one? Stop running from God. Some of you were dragged here. I saw heel marks all over the parking lot. And the only reason you were hesitant to come here is because it has a God component. Stop running from God. The Bible says all you have to do is turn around. Turn God's way. He'll start working in your life. Slow down. Some of you, velocity is imperiling your soul. Slow down. Show your heart. Some of us, that's very hard to do. Your team needs it. Let others lead. Those of you who are high control, let others lead. Is it time? Feed your soul. Leadership in today's environment can be 24/7. It can be intoxicating. When do you feed your soul? Is your soul hungry? Bless the team. Could change the whole atmosphere in your environment. Bless the team. Make the ask. Some of you have big dreams. You know where there is. You're just chicken to ask. You're afraid to go up to someone and say, I need your help. We need a large financial gift. Would you please join my team? Courageous leaders make courageous asks. Do something more impactful. Some of you, you've been pounding the same nail your whole life, and God's been whispering to you to do something of greater impact for eternity. Maybe today you would mark that where you're sitting in this chair is when you said, okay, God, now it's time. How about this next one? Come clean. Come clean. Anyone know what that means? Spirit speaking to you about that? Embody the vision. Somebody has to embody the vision for the people to catch it. Celebrate the victories. Don't wait till the destination. Speak the truth. Tough conversations. Pay the price. Count your blessings. How about this one? End the secret. Go to somebody. End the secret. Get it out in the light. Check your motives. Set the pace. Give God your best. You know, God has only ever given you His absolute best. That's all He's ever done. It's the only thing God has ever done is give you His absolute best. Are you giving your best back? Get physically fit. Serve your spouse, your kids. Pray. Humble yourself. Gang, I am absolutely convinced that if beginning in this session, for the next couple days, if you will say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. I have my antenna up. I cleaned off all the little pieces to it. When you feel these promptings and these nudgings, experiment, practice with them, and see where God takes you. And I think it will help you get from here to there the right way, for the right reasons. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we don't have to know 100 things about leadership to lead well. We don't actually have to get some exhaustive list exactly right. We have to understand some fundamentals. That you give people leadership gifts to move something or someone from here to there. It takes fantastic people to do it. It's a joy to assemble them and lead them. Mile markers, celebrations, keep people pumped up in the journey. And without your whispers, without your presence, without that additional guidance and encouragement, we would surely fall. So God, anoint and bless every person here and whisper to us, God, by your grace. Everyone agreed with this prayer and said, amen. Thank you very much.